Hi everybody, welcome back to my channel. My name is Marie, and I decided to re-record this video because the first time I just recorded everything all at once, and when I went to break it up, it kind of didn't make sense anymore. I was able to use the first two videos that I did, I was able to use most of it, and I did go back and re-record a few things, but this time I had no intro or outro. It just literally started from my last breath from the second video, and I was like, that doesn't make sense. And I thought, well, if I have to re-record an intro and outro, I might as well just kind of redo the video itself as well, because I can get to the point a little better this time also, and I think it'll make it a little more enjoyable and not just like, oh my god, she said all that in 3 hours. Like, it just makes more sense. So so the last video ended sometime between like March and April, the timeline. I had my first miscarriage, and then I talked a little bit about what happened after, like being at work and things like that. So then my husband and I took some time off. This was in 2017. I didn't mention the year. So we took a couple months and we let my body heal, and then we started trying again. And his family came to visit, and this was in July. And when they were there, I can't remember if it was right before they showed up or if it was when they were there, but I found out I was pregnant again. I used 2 apps to track my period. One of them is more of just straight period tracking when you're going to have it. The other one is a period tracker, and it allows you to tell the app that you're pregnant, and that, you know, it'll stop telling you should be having your period. The first one doesn't do that. But I've been using the first one for so much longer that it kind of was more accurate of when I was going to get my period and when I was going to ovulate than the newer app. So I just kept using both, and I still use both. It's kind of weird to use 2 of them, but I think together they work really well rather than just one separately. So his parents were visiting, and his older sister and her son came along as well. And because it was summertime, we were doing like fun summery activities. And I was trying to be very careful because I didn't want to do anything overly exert myself and do anything too physical. Like, we rode our bikes across the Golden Gate Bridge, and that was okay, but we didn't eat. And we had like a little snack when we got across the bridge, but then from there we went into like Tiburon, and we were just really, really riding hard that day, and I started feeling nauseous, and I went back to the little town and I got a sandwich, and then my husband eventually came back, and then they went to wherever they were going, and then they came back and joined us all together. And I was like, okay, I need to kind of slow down a little bit. And then the next weekend we went tubing, and it was a nice hot day, but the water was freezing. It was like icy cold, and I just was not feeling it. I was just like, I don't want to, I don't want to, like, you know, try to be a little mermaid in and out of the water. It was way too cold for that. And for them, they were okay because they were moving around so much, but it was icy water, and I didn't feel good. I was like, no, this is not going to happen. And then I ended up getting my period. We didn't even make it to go to the doctor for the first ultrasound. I had scheduled it, but you have to be like, I think they want you to be like 8 weeks. It's between like 6 and 8 weeks before they do the first ultrasound. And I hadn't reached that point yet. I wouldn't have even known I was pregnant if I hadn't been paying attention, because I did do an early pregnancy test like 2 or 3 days before I was supposed to actually have my period. So I knew, but if I wasn't paying attention like the first time, I would have just been like, oh, I got my period. So we were sad, but we weren't as upset because we weren't attached to it yet, and we hadn't gone and did the ultrasound, so we didn't see it or anything. And then in September, I got pregnant again, and we were like, okay, we'll wait a little bit to be excited. And we did actually get to go to the first ultrasound. And this was like the end of September. So it was sometime in October that we went and saw the ultrasound. And then it was the day before Thanksgiving. We were going to go to his parents' condo in Florida for Thanksgiving, and we were leaving Thanksgiving morning. And the day before I got my period, And we had already gone to the doctor. We had the first ultrasound. We saw it. It wasn't as big as the first time we were pregnant, but we were excited. We're like, baby. And then I got my period, and it was like, okay, this sucks. I was just really mopey at home, and my husband, who is normally very caring and like very supportive, was so upset, and he was being a little bitchy to me, and I was just like, this is not my fault. And he actually left. He was gone for like 2 hours. I really don't know where he went, but I was like, okay, whatever. I just moped on the couch. And he came home and he started drinking. And that's really, I was shocked. I was like, really, you're drinking? We don't drink very often. And usually if we do, it's because people are over and we're having dinner. We don't just normally randomly drink for no reason. And I mean, I get he had a reason, but it was just so unusual. And then the next day he was so much better. But this time he was really upset when I had the miscarriage. And the next day, like when we went to the airport, he didn't let me pick up my bags, and he was more doting and like kind of pampering me a little bit, because he knew that I was in a lot of pain because it was it's like a really heavy period and cramps and everything. And so he was a lot nicer. And then we got to his parents' condo, and I didn't think I was going to cry. My eyes are getting watery. Sorry. His mom is just so nice. I am just so lucky to have really great in-laws. And I can't remember if I said that in another video or not. It might have been the one that I'm re-recording. But they're just loving people, and they're so nice to me. And, my period was just really heavy, so I kept getting blood on things, and she helped me clean it. And his dad made dinner for us. It was delicious. And he was all really happy. He's like, this is the first time I made a turkey. And, he was in his late 60s. So we're like, well, really? The first time? It was cool. So at least like I had some loving people around me. I'm going to get a tissue. I actually brought tissue this time as well, because my eyes won't stop watering. But these are tears of joy because of how lucky I am to have great in-laws. Because I know so many women don't. And my husband is the one who has the crazy mother-in-law, but that's another story. So, December we didn't try. Again, I wanted to let my body heal, and then in January, I went to my doctor and I told her, I need to talk to you about my depression, because I had tried really hard to not take medication for it, but I could feel it coming on, and all the things that I normally would do to combat it weren't working. When I was 23, I was still in college. My dad died suddenly, and I really didn't think I was going to cry this much, but it was just so unexpected, and that whole entire year wasn't great. I went home from work one day, and my landlady was like, I'm going to sell my place. And she had mentioned it a month before, but I just kind of was like, oh, she's thinking about it. But she gave me a date. She was like, I'm actually going to sell it. Next week I want to have an open house. And then when I actually sell it, then I'll give you 30 days notice. I'm like, okay. I go find a new place to live. It's fine. I liked her a lot. I still like her. We remained friends over the years. Then I went to work, and the very next day I got laid off. And my boss mentioned the month before that she might have to lay me off because we were bought out by another company. But everybody else got laid off and I didn't. So I didn't think I was going to get laid off. I was just like, I'm fine. That just sucked. And then I also changed colleges, and I was having problems with my boyfriend, and we'd been together a couple years, and I had to move. And then I ended up moving again, because where I moved, I had a roommate where I was living before, and her and I got along really well, like perfect. I never had any complaints with her. And we moved into a bigger place, and her friend came to live with us, and it was a nightmare. And so I ended up moving to my grandma's house because I couldn't find another place to live that I could afford, and I was just like, I can't deal with another roommate. She made living there a nightmare. And my original roommate thought it was me because that was her friend. But then after I moved out, she realized it was her friend, and she apologized to me. And I was like, okay, I'm not crazy, because I started to feel like maybe it was me and maybe I was crazy, but I was like, okay, no, it really was her. And so I had a really terrible year. And then when my dad died, it was like, okay, what else is going to happen? I couldn't deal with anything else. And I also didn't have anybody that I really felt was supportive of me. So trying to like go to school and everything, and keeping up with my grades and all the work, because he died a few days before the semester started again, and I took off a total of about 2 weeks in a 3-week time period to go to his funeral. And then, so my parents lived in Washington State, and my dad is originally from Minnesota. So we drove from Washington to Minnesota, but I went back to California in between that time. We had cremated him, and then my mom didn't want to fly, because this was in 2002, and it was almost the anniversary of 9/11, and she just was like, I don't want to deal with planes. And laws are different now when you're transporting human remains. He was cremated, so he was in a bag inside of a sealed box. Well, it was like a box and then inside of another box. So it wasn't like when you see in TV where, like on Desperate Housewives, there's this one episode where they're like out on a lake and they open, the urn gets open and it goes all in their face. That doesn't really happen in real life. It's funny for TV or creepy, whatever, but that's not how things are. They usually put you inside of a bag and then into the urn. So, I'm getting off topic, like I normally do. So I ended up with severe depression because of that. And when that happened, I went to my doctor. I thought I had like an infection or something, because like a virus. I was just like, I don't feel good. It doesn't matter how much I sleep. I sleep 4 hours. I sleep 12 hours. I'm exhausted. My body hurts. I'm just really tired. And then when I was talking to people, just every regular, like just how I'm talking right now, my eyes would water up. It wasn't even a sad subject. I was just tired and crying. And she's like, okay. And she asked me all these questions. She was like, you have depression. I'm like, really? I do? Because I didn't really feel like, oh, I'm depressed. I'm just like like Eeyore. I wasn't like mopey and moody. I just was like, okay, this is how depression presents itself in me. And so since then, I've learned a lot about how to not be severely depressed, but the things that I was doing weren't helping, because sometimes it is just mental and you just got to get yourself out of your funk, and other times it's a hormone imbalance, and the things that you can do physically to help you get out of the funk don't always work. So she was like, okay, we'll try some medications. And I told her my history on those, because the ones that I had tried, I spent 3 years using medication before. None of them worked. Or if they did, the side effects were so severe that I couldn't stand it. Like, they now have Prozac as on record as something that I'm allergic to, because it causes me, it's not really a rash, but my entire body, like, my skin changes and it's itchy. And it doesn't look like red, like rashy, when you get like a red spot or rash, but like I'm itchy. And then I just sit there and I scratch and I scratch. And there's other things like, it causes me to have a lot of gas. Like, I don't fart, but it's just gas in my stomach, and it feels like somebody's squeezing my intestines. And it causes me to have dry mouth, which then makes my throat sore, and all of these other things. And then there was like other medications that they had given me that caused, like, I would stay up all night long. It'd be like 5 a.m. I never did illegal drugs, but I'm pretty sure it was like when people do like cocaine or something, you're just like wide awake and you're like hyper aware of everything. I didn't like how that made me feel. And then I couldn't sleep, and I was still in college at the time, and I changed from going to school during the day to at night, because I was just up all night long. And that way, at least I made it to class. And so I discussed that with her, and I was just like, some of these are just crazy. It had been about 15 years, and they've come up with different medications since then. And so she was like, well, I want you to try this. And I tried it, and it didn't really do much at first. And she was like, well, you need to take another dose every day instead of just 1, 2. And that's how they work. They make you take like 1 dose at a time, and then they build you up to a higher dose until you get to a point where you feel like it's working. And when I started getting up to the higher dose, it was actually causing me to have panic attacks. And I had never had that before. I have highly functioning anxiety, which I don't do anything really to deal with it. It's not the same thing as when people have like a panic attack or an anxiety attack, because they're kind of different. They're very similar, but they're different. Mine was just my brain doesn't turn off and I'm always thinking. And it's great if I didn't have a problem with blood, I would be a great first responder, because I can look at a situation and like immediately know, because I've overthought every possibility already, what is great, like the best plan to like get things done. So when emergencies do happen and they're not involving blood, I'm pretty good at like handling them and just getting through it and getting things done. I feel the effects of that and I freak out afterwards, which is really weird, but that's how I am. So with a highly functioning anxiety, it's kind of made me good at most of my jobs, because I anticipate the problems that can happen. So when they do happen, I look like somebody who makes a quick decision. And it's like, no, I just thought about this as a possibility before. While other people will be like, oh, this happened, now what do I do? I'm like, oh yeah, here's the path for that, because it's already in my brain. And I'm sure there's a lot of other people who are like, oh my God, I do that too. So with the panic attack though, or anxiety attack that it was creating for me, I was getting ready in the morning and I would see the front door and I would like literally my hands would just start shaking, and I'm standing there and I'm like shaking and I just started crying, and my husband's like, what's wrong? I'm like, I can't go to work today. I just couldn't leave the house. And I'm kind of a people person. Like I do have my moods when I don't feel like dealing with anybody. I just want to be at home and kind of be mopey, like for a day or two. And then, but normally I'm like, I'm like the more the merrier. I like to have people around and be around my friends or whatever. And then being at work, it just gives me something to do. And I like to accomplish things. So, whatever task I need to do, when I do it at work, I'm like, I just feel happy. Even if nobody says, oh, you're doing a good job, I still feel good about myself because I accomplished something. And that was just gone. I just couldn't even leave the house. So I called my doctor and I was like, it's causing this problem. And she's like, okay, we're going to put you on something else. And I can't remember what this one is called, but it wasn't really working either. And she was like, you need to give it more time. I'm like, okay. And I want to say this was probably February. It wasn't working at all. I forgot to take it one day and I wasn't feeling good. And it was also causing me to stay up all night long. And I didn't go to work. I emailed and said I wasn't feeling good and I wasn't going to go to work. And I took my husband to the train station and I came home and I went to bed and I slept the entire day. And I should have taken my pill probably, I think twice. It was like once in the morning, once in the evening, before dinner. And when I finally woke up, I was like, oh my God, he's going to be at the train station any minute now. And I grabbed my phone and I went to get my keys and my shoes, and he walked in the door and he was really angry, and he doesn't like yell at me. We don't fight like that, but he just didn't want to talk, and he said something and he just walked in the kitchen. I'm like, okay, he's mad. I'm like, there's nothing I can do. He's going to be mad. I'm going to leave him alone. And I went back to bed. And when he came to bed that night, it was probably around 10:30. I could hear him, but I couldn't open my eyes. My body just was like, you're going to stay asleep. And then I had trouble breathing and I started like twitching. I looked like a crackhead because I was like that. And I couldn't stop it. And I'm like laying there and I start twitching. And then I sat up and I couldn't breathe. And I started kind of coughing and I'm twitching and I'm coughing. And he started rubbing my back and he's like, are you okay? I'm like, I don't feel good. Like, this feels really weird. I don't feel good. And I couldn't stop. And then I finally got my breathing under control, but I still didn't feel normal. And it was like an electric shock feeling going through my body. And I asked him to help me get up, and I couldn't stop. I was just like that, trying to walk. And he took me to the ER. It was maybe like 11 o'clock when we got there. And it was more of something I probably should have gone to like an urgent care for, but at that time of night, they're closed. So we go to the ER, and because I wasn't like life or death, I was still alive. They put me last on the list of like things that were going on. It wasn't until like 2:30 in the morning when I finally saw the doctor, and nurses came and checked on me and everything. And I was just laying down on a bed, kind of laying there, just relaxing. It wasn't as bad. It was, I still twitched uncontrollably, but it was less than when I would actually sit up and talk or move at all. When I started moving, it just got worse and more intense. And the doctor at first, when she walked in and I started talking to her, I was laying down, and then she had me sit up, and she was like listening to me breathe and everything. And then I started twitching more, and she kind of, I think she probably thought I was kind of faking it at first. And we were going through like what was happening and stuff. And I was like, I didn't take my medication today. And I had looked up some of the symptoms already online, because this was something that happens to 0.01% of the people who take it. And there had been other times when I didn't take it exactly at the same time. You had to take it almost down to the minute at the same time every day. And there was other times when I would be at work and I was kind of busy and I didn't take it for like an hour, and I would turn and I could feel that electric shock feeling. And it wasn't as intense, but it was like, whoa, that's a weird feeling, and it was new. So when I was describing that to her, she was like, okay. And then she asked me some other questions, and she tried to delicately ask me if I did illegal drugs. And I was like, no, I don't. This is just that medication. I was doing the prenatal vitamins, and I think that was it. I didn't have a reason to take any other medications, which I'm happy that I don't have to. I am overweight, but I don't have diabetes or any other health things. I'm just a little chubby. So and I say so way too much, sorry. Anyways, and that doesn't really make sense either. Yeah, so it was kind of the word that I got to use. So, so we were talking, and she told me, well, because this isn't related to a street drug, there's nothing I can really do for you. I'm not your primary physician, so I don't know the depth of the medication and everything. And she could see in my chart, but she was like, I think you really need to talk to the doctor that prescribed it, which was a psychiatrist or psychologist. I don't really, I don't know which one does which. I could probably Google that. But the woman that I got them from wasn't my primary physician either. It was another doctor, but it's within Kaiser. So they, tell you, okay, go to this person and see this person for that. And it's like they're all in the same building. So I had the app on my phone, and I sent her a message, and I basically just went home, and then I was up all night long because it was still the middle of the night at this point. And I just stayed awake. My husband went to sleep for a little while, and then around 7 in the morning, I got a message from her, and she's like, I can see you at, I think it was like 10. And I messaged her back right away. I'm like, yes, I'll be there. So my husband stayed home from work that day, and he took me. And we were talking, and she was like, so what's going on? What's the problem? And I was still twitching a lot. And he was really like passionately vocal about what had happened. He's like, look at her. She can't stop twitching. And he's like, she's not doing that on purpose, because when we sat down, I had been twitching a little bit, but while we were speaking, I wasn't moving as much. So the twitching had subsided a lot. But she had me stand up for a second, and then I started twitching a lot more, and she was like, okay, I see, what your husband's talking about. And so she gave me clonazepam to counteract the side effects of the twitchiness and everything. And she was like, okay, well, that pill, you're obviously stopping right now. Just throw away what you have. You can't take it anymore. And then she put me back on the other pill that I was taking before that at a very low dose, because that was causing me to have panic attacks, which wasn't as bad as the twitching, which is still really weird. But she didn't want me to just go off anything altogether. And I stayed home for a couple days from work because the twitching lasted for like 3 days. And when I finally stopped taking the clonazepam after like a week, I was like, okay, I feel like myself again. I felt normal, but I still didn't feel great as far as like my mood and the depression. But all that twitchiness and the side effects and that drug was out of my system finally. So I went back to work and everything, but I was still having a hard time with just getting to work every day. So I decided to quit my job because even though they never said anything to me, I felt like a terrible employee. I felt like I could do better. I had been doing better, but I just wasn't living up to my own standard of work. So I told them, I'm not going to give you guys 2 weeks. I'm going to give you I can't speak, sorry, as long as you need, and let me know when you find somebody. And it took them about a month to find somebody, which was fine because I didn't want them to just go and hire whoever because I was like, I'm leaving. I wanted them to have somebody good because I did care about my job and the people that I work with. They were great people and I really liked that job, but I needed to focus on healing myself, and I didn't want to be fired because I was a terrible employee either. I've never been fired because of something like not being able to do my job. So I was just like, okay, I think it's better if I just kind of take a break. And my husband and I had also discussed moving and him being transferred. So he waited a few months and he asked to be transferred. He didn't do it right away because even though the game had already launched and the bulk of all of the craziness that comes along with that was over, there's still what they call the downloadable content that comes after, and like the patches, because sometimes they just don't make the game perfect, but they need to get it out. Otherwise, it'll just drag on for years. And then they do these patches later that fix the issues or expand the game more to what they originally wanted it to be. So he was still working on those things. And we also talked to the doctor about actually doing IVF. And so we moved in October of 2018. And this was February, towards the end of February at this point. So between February and October, we did go see the IVF doctor, and I'm going to make another video for that one because I think this one is probably pretty long already and I don't want it to be too long. So I'm going to end here and then I'm going to start recording the next one right now. So come back. Today is Monday. I wanted to upload this video today, but I'm probably not going to do it till tomorrow. So I'm thinking Thursday I'll have my next video. And then also on Saturday, I'm going to be trying to upload something that's different than what I'm doing, something kind of fun or silly. Like the video I have, it's kind of a DIY. No, I always say that wrong. DIY thing, but it's also kind of silly. Just to have something break up this like sad, depressing topics. So the little, I always do this. Things over here. The little subscribey thing will come up if you want to subscribe so you can know when the next video is up. But I will try to do like Tuesdays and Thursdays. I think I can do that for right now. And yeah, so have a good day.